Rebels Radio. This is Julio Ricardo Varela at Julito77. And it is Easter Sunday. Happy Easter to everyone who's celebrating the holiday, and also happy Passover to our friends who celebrate Passover. Again, this is Latino Rebels Radio. It is 10 o'clock on the East Coast, 7 o'clock on the West Coast, and you are listening to the second episode of Latino Rebels Radio. You can follow us on Twitter at Latino Rebels. Also, hashtag Latino Rebels Radio on Facebook. You can find us Latino Rebels. We are also on Tumblr, Latino Rebels. We're also on Pinterest. We're pretty much everywhere. And we're also on our main site, LatinoRebels.com. So, it is 10:01 Eastern Standard Time. We're going to have a show. Let me just do a little rundown of the show today. We're going to sort of talk a little bit about what we've been doing. I believe I have Monica Ramirez on the line. Monica, are you here?
Good evening. I am here. I hope everyone's doing well tonight.
That worked. It worked. So Monica and I are going to talk a little bit, and then probably about, say 10, 15 minutes, we're going to have Liz Marie Alvarado, who's a cast member of Al Jazeera America's Borderland. Episode 2 ended about 2 or 3 minutes ago, and we're going to talk about that. We're also talking with Blanca Vega around 10:30. We're going to be talking about that Slate piece that was written about whether Latinos are going to be tomorrow's whites. Monica, did you read about that? Did you read?
I did read about it, and I thought.
Did you read what I wrote? Did I read what I wrote?
It was great. It was great.
Well, we're going to be talking about that. And then finally, we're going to be talking with Roque Planas of HuffPost Latino Voices. And Roque wrote this really cool viral list about 19 reasons why people that come to the United States are coming for other things besides the American dream. And it's a really interesting, history about Latin America, U.S. Latin American relations. And it went viral the last couple of days. Did you see that one on your Facebook wall as well, Monica?
I did catch it. It was great.
I mean, you're all over it. You were just hip. You're just hip.
I'm on it.
You are on it. So just to get a little bit of taste here, a couple of things you guys all need to know. This is our second episode. We are tweaking it little by little. We're going to have other rebeldes joining us throughout the hour. For example, el Profesor Marentes will be joining us. Monica's going to be joining me for the first half hour. We're going to talk a little bit, and then we're going to talk to Liz Marie Alvarado. And then Christian Enriquez is literally he's officially our producer. So Christian will be taking calls. If you want to call us anytime throughout the show, give us a call at 347-308-8633. Again, 347-308-8633. And then we'll bring you in at the right time. And if not, if we haven't brought you in yet, it's not because we don't want to talk to you, but we have several guests. So, Monica, first of all, happy Easter. How are you doing?
Happy Easter. I'm pumped for the second show.
You're pumped. I know, you should be. So tell me what, before we get into, our guests and other things that we're doing, what have you been hearing, following? Let's talk about, we did Not One More last week, the hunger strikes at the White House. One of the things that I saw today by DRM Action Coalition, was that I actually think that they held a banner, right? Not One More, while the president kind of sped by in D.C. Do you know anything about this, or did you see it, or have you heard anything else about what's going on down in D.C.?
Actually, I didn't catch that, but I'm glad to hear about it. I know that the hunger strike is ongoing, and they've passed the strike on to others. I think the last group that took up the strike was from Texas, and it's pretty amazing that they're not backing down. They are committed to seeing change happen, and they believe that if they continue to raise their voices and be a permanent fixture in front of the White House, that there is going to be change soon. So, more power to them, because I think they are getting a lot of people's attention.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of in, I think it's like day 17 maybe. For people that don't know, there's actually a very small group of hunger strikers, and mostly families of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Monica, but it's mostly families of people who have been deported or are at risk of being deported, and they're just literally taking the message to the White House. And actually one of the things that we covered this week was that I believe a reporter from La Opinión is the Spanish language daily in Los Angeles, actually asked the president about, there's hunger strikers outside, and I think, the president basically didn't really address the hunger strikers directly, but basically said the need for comprehensive immigration reform. I didn't hear that specifically, but what did you hear what the president said this week when he was at his press conference?
I did watch that clip, and and I certainly didn't catch a strong response on his part. I felt like it was a little glossed over, and I think that as we've seen different people from the White House speak to this issue and this campaign, particularly this campaign, I think that the focus is really on Congress. What's Congress going to do? And there have been a number of people who are saying we need to stop focusing on the president and asking him to take action. We need to redirect our efforts to focus on members of Congress who should be passing an immigration law. And I think that's a valid point. But I think that these hunger strikers and a lot of people are backing the Not One More campaign. They're saying that the president does have authority. The Senate caucus has said the same. The president does have certain authority. There is administrative action that could be taken right now. Why are families continuing to be separated? Why are people still in detention? And so there is no more time to wait. And so I think that to the extent that there is action that could be taken, that's what they want to see, and they want to see it now.
Right, and I think even if we look at this, and we're going to get Luis Marie Alvarado in a couple minutes, cast member of Borderland. I know she's just calling in, but I just want to make this one point, and then we're going to bring her in because I think she will have a lot to say about this issue as well. But I think even from a political standpoint, and I've written a lot about this, is the fact that, there's this sense that it's midterm elections and Latinos aren't going to vote because they feel that here we are again, La Promesa, which is the promise that, that has been so symbolized as, here was the great Latino awakening, although, less than half of all eligible Latinos have voted in the 2000 election. But I think that a lot of people are very frustrated with the president and the administration, unfairly or fairly. We can argue that for the next hour. But, one of the things that I argue from a strategic point is at some point you're going to have to acknowledge your base. And if you want your base to come back, saying that, we have no more, there's nothing else we can do, although in fairness, the president did go to the Department of Homeland Security saying that there needs to be more of a humane push for deportations. And the New York Times wrote about the fact that a lot of these deportations are really happening to people that aren't, quote-unquote, serious criminals. So basically, long and short of it, it's still messy, right? I mean, we can't. That's right. And every time I've seen these immigration activists, and I say these kids or whatever they are, I'm like the old guy, but every time they've been told that this can't happen, it always seems that they are the only ones that have kept this issue in front of the consciousness not only of Latino voters, but I think of national voters. And so from a political standpoint, I think you can have it both ways. I think it's a win-win for the president, and I think saying that, we can't do anything is just kind of capitulating to sort of that small minority of the Republican Party that doesn't want to do anything. Mm-hmm. That's just my take. Yeah. But what do I know?
They're keeping the pressure on, and I think that I had an opportunity to meet with some of the families and their experiences and the trauma that they're suffering, and that's real. And there are how countless families around the United States who are in that same position, and having lived in Alabama after HB 56 went into effect, I saw the way families were suffering, and I know our friends in Arizona and other places, they have real stories to share about how this is affecting people's lives every single day. And I think that the DREAM activists are saying that we're voters and we are made a promise, and we want you to come through on that promise. And
right.
in the meantime, you're not going to be allowed to continue destroying our communities. And so whether it be Congress or whether it be the president or DHS through some administrative action, somebody needs to answer.
Right, and there's only so much that, I think one of the problems with the Beltway mentality, which, having been in D.C., is that sometimes it does get a little bit insulated from the real stories. So anyone that brings those real stories into the district, literally into the district, people are paying attention. I mean, whether it's, everyone's like, oh, it's only a certain group of hunger strikers, but, they're doing it, and they're getting attention, and they believe in it. So, I say it's something that's real and honest, and I also have spoken to several families and several moms of young dreamers who, I get on the phone and talk to them, and this is not some conspiracy theory. This is like, I want to help my kids. So,
right.
The human side, and I think this is going to be a perfect transition for our next guest, and let me bring her in, who is a cast member of Al Jazeera America's Borderland, which was episode 2 tonight. For people that are not familiar with the documentary, what I say, it's kind of like The Amazing Race meets the immigration debate, and it's basically 6 cast members, who literally trace the steps of three migrants who perished in the desert. And after episode, so we're in episode 2, everyone sees the story, and we're going to talk a lot about episode 2 in a second, and I will introduce our cast member in a second. But now the way it ends is that they now have to go back to the United States as migrants. So it was a very powerful episode, and we're really, really happy. Darle un bienvenido Latino rebel Liz Marie Alvarado. Saludos. Hi. How are you?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm proud to say I'm a Latino rebel myself. So
well, you are here with Julito. That's what they call me, and Monica. So we're really happy to have you. So
Hi.
So basically, before we get into the episode and your experience, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more, like who you are, where you're from, what you do, so that they know who we're talking with.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Liz Marie, and I am also part of the cast for Borderland. But right now, actually, I'm calling you from Immokalee, Florida. And for those of you that might have ever heard about the Coalition of Immokalee Workers, it's an organization that I support the work of, and I am here with the Student Farm Worker Alliance right now. And I'm actually calling you from a little car because the connections are not really good here because it's an agricultural community. So this is the best place where I have reception.
Well, you sound great. You sound great. And you're originally from Nicaragua, right?
Yes, I am originally from Nicaragua, me and my whole family. And I am the only person that is actually a U.S. citizen right now. So my family is of mixed status. And I've been involved doing community work for already 7 years. And I will continue to do so until things start to change, as we have seen change. No,
that's right. And we're actually going to talk about 2 things since we're going to talk about the episode, but since you're based in Florida, we do want to talk to you a little bit about the recent news about the SB 1400, but that's going to be before we bring you back, because about the in-state tuition for undocumented students. So, but before we do that, I want to, we want to go back to Borderland. Episode 2 ended. Basically, for people that saw it or didn't see it, the cast members went and retraced the steps of migrants that perished in the desert, and Liz Marie followed the life of now I forgot her name. What was her name? I'm sorry. In Mexico? Claudette. Thank you. And then and now they're kind of we learned about the story. I'm going to talk about that, and we'll have several questions for you. And now they're kind of coming back to the United States through, and they see the reality of what happens. So, Lizlani, I think this episode was probably something that's very unique, hasn't been really seen on American television. And I think one of the biggest things that I got out of it is the fact that there was a big focus on Central America and, El Salvador, or that area down, southern Mexico. Can you talk first about one of I think the major points that the documentary tries to make today in today's episode is how the connection of U.S., policy and things like that have led to these type of, experiences or situations that people are seeing now.
Yeah, well, I think that's really important because, unfortunately, as is reflected by some of the cast members, there's a lot of misinformation or just lack of knowledge of the history of the United States as its impact, not only politically but also economically. So this is a way of introducing, I feel, American audiences to this topic, right, from a very humanistic side as opposed to just giving facts. So I feel like this is really important because they're hearing it firsthand from the people that are experiencing it or have experienced.
Right, and so that is sort of one of the things that when we hear, the fact that violence and things that happened in those areas are seen as part of the culture. I mean, I think that's one of the things that came out, at least when two of the cast members were in El Salvador and there was a killing, right? And it was like, this is part of the culture. You growing up in Central America, I'm not trying to lead you, but I really want to share with our listeners, what was it before? It's you know what I'm saying? It's like, what's the reality? What was the reality when you were growing up, and what is it now? And how much has that changed?
Yeah. And I feel exactly what you were saying. I feel like that's an important point, especially as Latinos. There's this idea that somehow our cultures are innately violent, corruption, etc., without the recognition of U.S. policies, a direct impact on that. And it's important to know that it's not just as simple as reducing it to people's individual behaviors or a community or a country, but actually looking at it through historical facts, right? And about how, to this day, capitalism and globalization continues to reproduce some of these patterns. And for me, it's really hard because, particularly Nicaragua, it's a country that has faced since its beginning as a country, U.S. intervention, and that's actually a lot of the reasons why Nicaraguan immigrants even came to the United States in the first place. So to this day, we have felt that firsthand, and a lot of people don't even know, but Nicaragua, for example, was the first country in the world to ever take the United States to the International Criminal Court against charges of terrorism. And up to this day, you will find landmines in different communities. And this is not to say to create somehow of a hate towards the United States, as a lot of people like to believe that people just hate America. That's not even the question here. Here's even just analyzing about historical things that have happened and also how that has led to immigration, right? Just looking at what are some of the root causes of migration. And definitely war intervention has been a very strong push out for people, especially Centroamericanos, right? People from Nicaragua, people from El Salvador, people from Honduras, even more recently because of the coup as well. And also the whole things with the gangs, how did this even came about, etc. So I feel like this is important. And this is definitely, at least the show is very introductory. I feel for a lot of people that have a lot of knowledge in the situation, it might be a bit frustrating, but I feel like this is really important to start this conversation with a lot of people that have never even been exposed.
Yeah.
And as a Central American, for me, is really important because sometimes we hear a lot about our Mexican brothers and sisters, but the reality is that we have to cross many borders as a Central American, and
yeah, no, I agree. I think
borders is Mexico. And
yeah, no, and I think you know, a lot of people, you know, when we see two of the other cast members actually working in a coffee plantation in Guatemala, like, I couldn't even begin to think of any American news network that has actually spent more than like 6 or 7 minutes showing some of those conditions, because those are images that rarely make it into the consciousness of the American television viewer. And you know, those are real people. Like you said, I believe you said that at one point, that we're, you know, you can agree or disagree politically, but we are talking about humans. Monica, do you is there anything that's that you want to ask Liz Marie?
Hi, Liz, I would like you to share with us a little bit more about what motivated you to be part of the show, because I feel like, you know, I think this documentary series really is trying to show people how complex immigration is and what people are just navigating, the decisions people are making before they come to the U.S. And I feel like based on your history, your own experiences, you're pretty well versed in this issue. So what made you decide that you wanted to spend your time being part of this?
It wasn't an easy decision for me at first. I'm the only of the cast members that actually did not look for this. I do not have an agent. I don't even know where to look for to be part of a TV show. That's not really how it is. I got an email in one of the listservs that I'm in. And yeah, there was an invitation, and actually I didn't want it to be part of this at first because I didn't thought it was legitimate. Because the email that we got was actually, it read more or less something like, we're looking for illegal farm workers or young people that want to do a show about illegal immigration. And we're like, what?
Right.
And we thought at one point it was a hate mail. We're like, do they know who they're sending this to? And for us, it was very troubling. And up to this day, that's one of my critiques of the show, of the constant use of the word illegal dropping, etc. So it wasn't. So it took some time for me to understand that it was actually a serious project. And then I also heard it was part of Al Jazeera, and Al Jazeera is a network that I've been following, especially Al Jazeera English, not really Al Jazeera America because it's new. And it's a network that I had a lot of respect for because of the different shows they had, you know, like People, Empire, etc. That really touched me and moved me politically. So I really appreciated that. And just having a long conversation, not only with myself, but also with people within the movement, particularly in Homestead, where I was at the time and still do work with We Count. It's a community organization for immigrant and workers' rights, also in an agricultural community like Immokalee. And this is a conversation, and I felt that there's not a lot of times in which people that are actually real work on the ground have a space. And at the end, we decided it was something that we were going to give it a shot. We were going to give it a shot with the expectations of this helping the work that we're doing here on the ground and really changing the consciousness of the public, of the people of the United States that have based their positions on immigration just on misinformation or just lack of knowledge about one another as people, but also just lack of knowledge in general. What is the situations that are pushing people out of the country, but also what are the situations that are going on right now that are separating families, worker exploitation. So to make it short, that's why I joined, because I like to believe that this will help to expand that debate and definitely put people at the forefront, put people that have been directly impacted, which in this case are the families, at the forefront of the debate. Because at the end, I feel like this show is irrelevant. We are irrelevant as cast members. We're just tools to tell these stories. And at the end of the day, I would really like people to focus on the story of Claudette, of Omar, of Teresa, as opposed to us, because, like I said, we're just tools, and that's the real issues that we're talking about here.
Yeah. So do you feel like, so, I mean, not to reveal much. I mean, I know there's two more, but did you feel you made the right decision? I know that's like a simple question. Do you feel like, you know, what you just said, do you feel like that's achieved or that will be achieved
I
for you?
I feel it's too early to tell, but I also feel it's our job as immigrant rights organizer, as a movement, to utilize this for our benefit. You know,
right.
for the benefit of our people, for the benefit of justice in general, and for the benefit of this country, because this is this is a really terrible, historical time that we live in, just as segregation was, just as many other things that United States has been known for.
Yeah.
I feel like we live in one of those moments. I also feel like we have to utilize everything, whether it's
we're all criminals. We're all criminals. Latinos are all criminals. We're all criminals.
No.
I mean, that's a big. I mean, not to oversimplify it, but that's what media. That's what people get fed, and people don't see.
That.
Yeah, people don't see that taxi cab driver like trying to save his friend. They don't see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
let me. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I feel we really have to change that, and not only seeing immigrants also as people that are suffering, escaping, but also as people that have self-determination and have the right to migrate and have the right to live a life of dignity without any pity as well. So this is also really important to see us as important components of this country for the future and for the present.
Yeah, we really appreciate you talking about Borderland, but I feel like with all the recent news that's happening in Florida, since we have you, and it's basically, even if you want to talk a little bit about this, so people that don't know, there's a bill that passed overwhelmingly in the House of Representatives in Florida for in-state tuition for undocumented students, and it has tons of bipartisan support in the Senate. Former Governor Bush, former Governor Mel Martinez, even Governor Scott has said this is kind of a good thing. And not to get into the nitty-gritty, but what happened on Thursday is that one of the state senators, who is Puerto Rican, Senator Negron, determined that this vote would not be put on the agenda, and it wouldn't be voted on. So, Lismani, I'm sure this is a topic of conversation that at least, I don't know if you're involved with, but I know that it's something that a lot of the people that we know in Florida have been talking about. We actually had Juan Escalante write a piece about this morning on LatinoRebels.com. And can you share anything of what you're hearing or what people are saying? I mean, my sense from Florida is that a lot of people are kind of like, what's going on?
Yeah, I can tell you just how it makes me feel, because I feel like it would be important to hear from those students directly that have been doing a lot of the lobbying and a lot of the mobilizing of other students as well. But at least as a Floridian, it's shameful. It's shameful that these people that are supposed to represent us do not represent us. They do not understand the needs of Floridians, and it's just terrible and heartbreaking, but it's also one of those things that I also feel that is just going to keep firing us to keep doing what we're doing. And and it's sad also when we have other Latinos obstructing the future and the lives.
I apologize for all Puerto Rican. I apologize for my Puerto Rican senator friend.
And that's and that's something that is really interesting of Florida as well, because sometimes this issue is framed as all Latinos are support immigrant rights, etc., and that's not the case. And that's not the case, right? And unfortunately, that's a reality, and that's something that we also do work with, right? It's not only to change change the hearts of people that just can't see beyond their noses, that can't see how privileged you are if you hold a piece of document, and it's also work for us to do within our own Latino community, especially, for example, the Puerto Rican community, even the Cuban community as well. Right. So this is also some issues that we deal as Latinos as well, because
and that's going to lead us to our that's going to lead us to our next time. So I want to thank you, muchas gracias por todo, for taking the time with us. Can you just shout out your Twitter handle and your website so that people who are listening can follow you or can learn more about you?
Yeah, sure. If you want to get involved, the best website to join right now is the notonemoredeportation.com, or you can just hashtag not one letter number one more. And please definitely get involved. I'm actually working with the Nowhere More campaign. I'm actually part of Endelon as well, part of the board, so I take the work of Endelon very seriously, and that's the work that we do also in Homestead, Florida with the No One More. And my Twitter handle, you're more than welcome. I'm new to Twitter, so...
That's okay.
So,
we're not. So we want to follow you at
it.
Latino Rebels. You need to follow us. So shout out your Twitter handle. Maybe get a couple of followers out of this.
Okay, it's Liz Marie, LISMARIEFL, as in Florida, Liz Marie FL. So you're more than welcome to follow me, and more importantly, let's follow each other in this work that we're doing. So definitely, it's about time to end deportations and for the president to act.
Well, thank you. This was Liz Marie Alvarado, cast member of Al Jazeera America's Borderland. It is on the next 2 weeks, Sunday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern, and we can't wait how it turns out. Un verdadero placer, and saludos rebelde, and we will talk.
Igualmente,
hablamos.
Un gustazo, y si se puede, eso. Que
Hablamos, todo bien. Okay, ciao.
Bye.
Samara, what'd you think?
I mean, it's amazing. She's in the heart of it. In Immokalee, Florida, Homestead, Florida. Those are
that's like they say. It is on. Well, I was really impressed.
Right.
We're kind of at the half hour. You're listening to Latino Rebels Radio. We just spent about 15, 20 minutes with Liz Marie Alvarado, immigration activist and cast member of Al Jazeera America's Borderland. And she was talking a little bit about sort of how Latinos, the internalizing of Latinos. And we're actually going to switch gears now. And I'm going to bring in a couple of people in. Monica, you can stay with us and listen in, and I'll bring you in because it's cool. So basically, I'm bringing in my good friend Blanca. Blanca, are you there?
Hi. Yes, I'm here. How are you?
How are you? Blanca Vega, and then Profesor. We got the Profesor on the line?
Sí, el profesor es Luis, aquí ando.
Ahí andas. Okay, so we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk a little bit about an article that was published by Slate Magazine, and the author was Jamel Bully, and he did it last week, and the headline was, "Will today's Hispanics be tomorrow's whites?" And the subhead was, "How Hispanics perceive themselves may shape the future of race in America." I'm not going to get too deep into this article. You can see it on Slate. You can also see it on a piece that I wrote in response to this about what I felt was a little bit of a story or an opinion piece that was off the mark in the fact that it was asking the wrong question. But I wanted to turn it over a little bit to Blanca because she just wrote an excellent piece this morning, and I'm going to bring you in, and I want you to talk a little bit more about the Slate piece, what you wrote. I'll try to weave in my opinions because it's only like the third day, and I'm actually now finally coming off the ledge. I've had some really heated Twitter exchanges with the author. I do not, first for the record, I do not see, anyone who writes for a living or has an opinion, when I get into Twitter debates, I'm actually a really chill guy. This is not about putting anyone being the bad guy. It's about having a conversation. So if anyone's listening and thinking that I'm attacking the author of this page, that's not the intention here. So, but Blanca, before you start, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then you can talk about what you wrote this morning.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. Again, my name is Blanca Vega. I am a doctoral candidate over at Teachers College at Columbia University, and I'm also director of the Higher Education Opportunity Program at Marymount Manhattan College. So I, have been delving much deeper into scholarship around race and higher education specifically. And a lot of my work has centered around discrimination and prejudice on certain groups, particularly undocumented students and students of color in higher education, and how that affects access and persistence in higher ed. Now, with that said, I also have been studying what we call the racialization of Latinos, right? And so when this piece came out by Jamel Bouie, it really sparked a lot of questions for me. One, much about the framing, right? So why are we always sort of focusing on Latino racialization, on whiteness, right? And two, part of what I'm mostly argue in my piece is this idea that that Latinos tend to be talked about without a Latino voice, and I find that a little problematic. So, I really am happy that Jamel Bouie actually put this out there, probably to an audience that maybe haven't been thinking about this, in a deeper way. And certainly the example that he provided, with George Zimmerman, being his race being contested,
that was the problem. I mean, before I bring in Luis, but that was the problem I had with, one of the problems that I had was, when you said it, is the overall structure of the piece. And as a digital producer and as someone that produces content online, the written piece and how it's presented is actually something that is incredibly important. When you start an example with George Zimmerman and then say that, this is, the thing about, the right wing was bringing up the fact that he was a white Hispanic, and there was, people that were sympathetic for Trayvon were trying to, it didn't matter. It's when I'm looking at the piece right now, and, he claims that I never read it. I mean, but the fact is, it's like,
right.
But it was like, it doesn't matter to he's actually a Hispanic non-racist person who acted in self-defense. The people that were sympathizing with Zimmerman, I made the argument pretty quickly that, every Latino that I knew basically knows that we got our own problems. We got our own problems, and
we do.
Here we are. It's like, and we use an example of this to start talking about what's a very valid question. It's like, is the United States going to be changing 50 years from now? But let's talk about Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin. So I'm going to be quiet, and you guys can jump in. So, go ahead.
I definitely think that it's an important example to use, actually. And it's what I sort of ended my piece with, right, where I suggest that it's just not sufficient anymore to talk about how many white bodies exist in the United States, but we also have to think about what are the values around white supremacy that we inherit and that we learn and that we pass on, that's also very important. So this idea that, this individual, George Zimmerman, could be, deemed a white Latino, right, or just a Latino in general, was also used as a proxy, to sort of say that he wasn't racist. But given the evidence that was provided and that, that we've learned over time, this person totally used, racist sentiment to pursue, attack, and then murder a young black man. So I think that it's important. I think that what he did was actually, it was important. It just wasn't executed well enough. It's just not sufficient anymore to sort of say that race is a biological concept, that doesn't have very real effects. I mean, and I think it's the effects that we have to start focusing on, not just how many white bodies exist in the United States.
Right. So,
may
you
I
want to jump
for
in?
a second?
Yeah, jump in.
Yes, I have a question for both of you, because I have a feeling that both of you dealt with the problem from a different perspective, but you have something in common. And both of you, in your critiques of the article, are insisting that there is a big Latino population that has been thinking, writing, producing, theorizing about these things. I have a feeling that Julio looked at it more from the perspective of social media and journalism, and Blanca is looking at it from the perspective of theory and academia. And I would like you to perhaps talk about why it is that you consider it's important for Latinos to be participating in these discussions as well.
Blanca
and what we have to contribute.
Yeah. Blanca can go first. Go ahead, Blanca.
Sure. Why do I think I think it's important for everybody to participate, right?
Certainly.
I wouldn't say just Latinos, but I think that there is an overrepresentation of non-Latinos in media and in academia discussing what Latinidad is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when, for example, this great article is coming out by Dr. Nicolás Vargas, and, he wrote about this issue of, how Latinos perceive themselves versus how others perceive them. And he certainly wasn't invited to talk, or write an article for Slate, or, was he invited to write an article for Huffington Post or any of these media outlets that, are sort of reaching the American public, right? It seems that we continue to go to certain individuals to write about our experience, to write about this idea of who Latinos are. Now, granted, the piece that Bowie wrote is about whiteness, right? With, Latinos sort of used as an example as sort of what I call a racial pawn, right? It wasn't about Latinidad. It was about whiteness. But he wasn't able to execute that well. So why is it important for Latinos to be a part of the conversation? I think anybody who's been studying it, researching it, talking about it, thinking about this deep conversation, not just Latinos, but it is important for the Latinos who are doing it to come to the center of the conversation and be part of that conversation.
And that's one of the things that I like in your piece, that you just give a list: Dr. Clara Rodriguez, Hector Cordero, Marta Moreno Vega. Then you talk about Dash Harris, Sofia Quintero, Daniel. Just the list in itself that you gave is an important contribution to the discussion, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree. And so, I mean, one of the things from the journalism, social media perspective is that, what I say in my piece when I started it, it says, it feels like now someone got the memo that, this is one of the fastest growing, groups in the United States, right? And, so now it's important, right? So this is something that has been happening for 4 or 5 years, quote-unquote bloggers, people on Twitter, Facebook pages have been talking about Latinidad, have been talking about identity, and have been having real conversations. I mean, real authentic conversations amongst each other, trying to educate people, right? So here comes Slate, which when I say, in all fairness, I mean, this is not a knock on Slate, but when I say, name me an outlet that really reflects the U.S. Latino experience in English that's mainstream, Slate is not the, if you said Slate, I'd be like, no, that's an X, like Family Feud. So the point being is that there's such an so this is an important topic. People see it from an editorial standpoint. Someone pitched this, and someone said, this world is changing. It is becoming, quote unquote, more layered, and we should write about this. So who do we have to write about it? And what's happened is that there's no go-to people to say, who do we know who's an opinion writer who can talk authentically about this Latinidad, about what's going on, who can actually connect with people who are studying this very same issue. And Blanca and I have had discussions, and Blanca's she's engaged Latino Rebels for a while now. She's also contributed to the page. So from the editorial perspective of all this, it's a cop-out. It's a cop-out. And I know it's a cop-out. And Bowie, and here's the thing, Bowie really he was expecting me to write Blanca's piece, right? But I knew Blanca was going to write that. I was looking at it from a media perspective. And when you look at it on the internet as a digital person, someone that reads these types of stories all the time, you see a headline that says, "Will today's Hispanics be tomorrow's whites?" Doesn't say, that is a loaded question, in my opinion. And so that got discredited by the author because I raised that. The other thing I raised is when you look at the editorial content, the first image we see are for darker skin, whatever, maybe mestizo, whatever, like at an immigration rally. So already there's an insensitivity to this type of content, whether it's Bowie or whether it's the Slate editors. It's like, we need a picture of Latinos. Where can we find it? Oh, an immigration rally. Look at these two women and these two kids. Perfect. So that's what you see as a reader. Then you go into the intro of Zimmerman, which is an important piece. It's important, but it instantly raises it to a point where, like, why are you bringing this up now? So as you go, as I read the piece, which I read 3 or 4 times, talking about Latinos as a third race, and then bringing in the Asian experience, like sort of as like from left field, are just things that, to me, it's exactly what you're saying, Blanca. It's like, I think the question wasn't framed correctly. It's an important topic to discuss. The execution of it showed a clear ignorance because there's no editors in a place like Slate that can say, hey, Mr. Bowie, like, let's go this way or let's go this way, because they see this and they see someone who's like very good at writing it, and there's no one there, like there's no one raising their hand and saying, guys, I don't think this truly reflects where we want to go with it.
And this brings me to another question that I would like to ask Blanca, because the other subject that appears from the whole article that I recommend that everyone reads it is she writes a line, and I think she repeats this phrase on a couple of occasions. Slate continues to perpetuate the myth of Latinos as the sleeping giants.
Yeah.
And I do not know, Blanca, if you could elaborate on that notion of the sleeping giants.
Yeah, it's one of my biggest pet peeves about this stereotype of Latinos as sleeping giants. I think for years, for centuries now, I think that there's been immigration has always been, the big topic in the United States to center their immigration laws, to center their citizenship laws. So immigration has been a huge sort of scary, monster, el cuco moment for the United States, right? And so, but in more recent times now, we also been seeing a surge in articles that are scaring the American public about how large the Latino population is going to become. And more recently, I've been seeing a pitting between the Latino population against the black population. So now we're scaring the black population. Look, black population, Latinos are going to be larger than you. And all in all of those articles, there's this, issue or this sleeping giant metaphor that has emerged from these articles that are saying, well, we're not going to be quiet anymore, and we're not going to stand by what all of you, have put us through. And the truth of the matter is that Latinos have been, even Latinos who have been arguing for whiteness and lost, we've still been protesting. We've been protesting for years. We haven't been silent about our conditions. We haven't been silent about, the ways in which our people have been treated, for years. And so this idea that we're the sleeping giant, I think also is a good way for American media and for American academy, the academia, to keep us silent, right? Well, they're not going to protest. They're going to read a piece like this, and, no one's going to question it. No one's going to be concerned, or maybe even no one's done any work on this, so we don't have to worry.
this idea of the sleeping giant, I wanted to, make sure that I talk about that a little bit more, because I think it's a lie. It's an American lie about Latinos that we're just now waking up. Waking up to what? We've always known that we've been oppressed.
Right.
I mean, even if Latinos have, okay, so let's say the worst case scenario is that Latinos have been fighting to be white. That's because they know they've been oppressed, and they know that being white is property, right? So it's this notion of Latinidad that I absolutely hate.
So Blanca, we could talk about this for an hour. So we're going to bring you back,
yes.
Right? We're going to bring you back. First of all, before we let you go, first of all, we want to thank you. I mean, can you just give people your Twitter handle and where is your piece exactly, so that if they want to read it, they can catch up on it?
Yeah. Well, my Twitter is a V as in Vega. NYC, so it's Blanca V NYC, and my blog
that rhymes.
Yes.
Blanca V NYC. I like that.
My students sing it all the time. And my blog is racelove.wordpress.com.
Racelove.wordpress.com. Racework.wordpress.com.
Racework.
Okay.
Racelove.wordpress.com.
Racework.com. Whatever you said.
Yep.
Anit's on the Latino Rebels Facebook page, so they can find the article there.
Yes, right. It's on the Latino Rebels Facebook page, and it's all good. So, Blanca, we really appreciate you taking the time with us, and we'll bring you back.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Absolutely.
Oh,
absolutely.
have a great one.
Good night. Yes.
Right.
Thank you, Blanca.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. All right, so now we're going to bring in somebody else. I don't know, before we talk about it, it's the Slate piece. I've actually calmed down from it, so I'm actually feeling better about the Slate piece. It was a little bit disturbing to see the author kind of question whether I read the piece or not, or my credibility, but I think that was all, I think people have seen through that, and hopefully we've moved on and having an important conversation. And we'll go from there. But now we're going to switch, and we're going to bring in a good friend of mine, and I think he's here. Roque, you on?
Yep, I'm over here.
We have Roque Planas from HuffPost Latino Voices, and you're here with Julito, with Luis, and Monica, and we want to have you talk a little bit about your viral piece that got a lot of attention the last couple of days on HuffPost Latino Voices, and we're going to turn it over to you, and you can explain it, and you can say what you did, so talk away.
Awesome, yeah. Well, thank you, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. So the piece is called, it's a typical sort of listicle called 19 Reasons Why Latin Americans Come to the United States That Have Nothing to Do with the American Dream, and basically it just goes through the history of U.S. intervention in Latin America, touches a little bit on issues like NAFTA, and just tries to give people an easy-to-understand outline of all the things the United States has done in Latin America that have prompted Latin Americans to leave, that have prompted, life in Latin America to become harder. And the point of the piece wasn't necessarily to say that the United States is responsible for all of Latin America's problems or anything like that, or to say that the American dream isn't one of the motivators that brings Latin Americans to the United States, because it most certainly is. At least the notion that someone can come here and have a better life than they do in their home country. But it was just to try and give people a way of understanding why so many millions of people, both legally and illegally, end up in the United States from this region that's our, the countries that are our neighbors. Because I think that when you look at the way that the immigration debate is going on in the United States, it's kind of happening in this vacuum where, and this is being corrected a little bit with the rise of Latino journalism, which I think is really cool. But generally speaking, you have this big debate about immigration, and particularly illegal immigration, and really big gaps in our knowledge as just, in the public, just sort of public consciousness about things like, why are these people here? I mean, you ask an average person why, and they wouldn't have, I don't think, an answer beyond, oh, well, people come here looking for a better life or the American dream. But in reality, there's a whole lot of history that goes into that. I mean, when you look at why there's so many Puerto Ricans in the United States, for example, there's more Puerto Ricans in the United States, or more people of Puerto Rican descent in the United States than there are in Puerto Rico, and that has a lot to do with the fact that the United States colonized Puerto Rico in 1898. There's, I can't remember the statistics off the bat, but I mean, it's something crazy, like almost 1 in 10 people born in Mexico living in the United States. I mean, that has to do with partly the economic dislocations of NAFTA. That has to do partly with a history in which Mexico lost much of its territory to the United States. So for a lot of people who live in that border region, right, neither place is really a defined country when you live within 100 miles of the border. So, yeah, that was just a little bit of what I was trying to do, and I was really happy that it resonated so much because it made it feel like there's all these people that understand it.
This is like this is crazy viral, man. You went crazy viral.
Yeah, no, it really did. It really did. I mean, and thanks you guys for promoting it and everything. That really gave it a huge bump, and it got a lot of people that saw it that wouldn't have seen it otherwise.
I lost myself because I had to switch. Some lines, so I don't know. And so I'm kind of coming back in. But Luis, Monica, do you have any questions about it?
I think Monica wanted to say something.
Well, okay, I just want to thank you so much for writing your piece. It was excellent, and I think you're right. I think a lot of people do not know this important history, so thanks for writing it. And what do you hope comes from this?
I mean, I think from my point of view, right, if I can do something with this knowledge that I have and that I learn and that I try to cultivate every day, it's just to give people a better idea of sort of what's at stake. I mean, there's sort of two things that I would like people to draw from this. Number one, when you're talking about immigration and particularly illegal immigration, it's that whole debate is really cast in these moralistic terms that I really think are irrelevant. It should be cast, to my mind, in terms of looking at what makes the most economic sense for the country and what makes the most sense for the people who live in the country, whatever their immigration status may be, and and that goes for people who are born here too. You want to search for policies that address the problems, rather than sort of casting things in this moralistic sense of, this person's a criminal or that person's not following the law. You have to craft policies that make sense. And the other thing that I would like to do, is just to sort of open people's eyes up a little bit to the way that not just, to the impact that the United States has in the rest of the world and the way that this country's actions can really prompt some of the problems that end up cropping up here. People don't seem to want to make those connections, but I feel like people would have a little bit more empathy if they understood that, our government and, our tax money plays a role in causing the problems that lead to things like illegal immigration.
That's great. And so I know you're a great supporter of our site and of the group, but just shout out your Twitter handle, shout out what Latino Voices Twitter handle out, and just say a little bit more about what you guys are planning to do as you keep going. It seems like this article resonated, and it definitely took off on our page. It got hundreds of shares very quickly. So
it has
over
500 shares.
500 shares. That's got no. I don't. Says
oh,
thank
wow.
you, Luis. It's crazy, man. And
you're in front of me.
Yeah, no, it's great. This is what. So give out your Twitter handle. Give out what Latino Voices is doing and what you guys are planning on doing.
Yeah. I mean, this is so. Anyway, my Twitter handle is Roquplanas, ROQ. P is in Peter, LAN is in Nancy, AS is in Sam. And I work for the Huffington Post at Latino Voices, and that's just at Latino Voices. And I mean, honestly, I hadn't really expected this to get this sort of reception that it did. And the thing that I thought was really cool, right, and I think that you guys, and looking at what you do, I'm sure that you would see why this matters. You know, I started seeing it pop up on my Facebook feed from people, both U.S. Latinos and then also my Latin American friends, you know, including like one of the, yeah, and I mean, like, that's not something, that's a really tough nut to crack, and I've been, you know, for the last 5-6 years thinking about that, you know, and like how you do that. I know you guys think about it too, like, because you have your Latin American part.
Aunt, dude, my aunt from Puerto Rico, like, emailed it to me. And she's like,
awesome.
And she's like in her, like, you know, she's in her 60s. So I'm like, that's when I know something goes viral. You know what I'm saying? When you get stuff from, like, your older family members saying, hey, should you share this on Latino Rebels? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's Roque. Oh, yeah, we know. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. And well, go ahead.
Yeah. No, but I will say one thing is to let you go. I mean, I don't know many other people that work hard and have done so much to support people in social media, Latinos in social media, like you've been doing it. You're just such a good person, as they say, good egg. And, you know, I told you before to get you on the show, and, you know, this is the reason why we have our show. Like, we're going to bring our friends, and we're going to brag about them. And I was just so happy that you got, like, a really good reaction, because you work hard. You guys do really good work that goes under the radar. You've been doing it for how long you been doing Latino Voices? Almost 3 years now? 2.5? I forget now.
Yeah, more like about almost going to be 2.
Yeah, 2 years, right?
I was at Fox News Latino before that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and so, you know, I think it's a page that does really relevant content. It has a really good Twitter presence. And, you know, and I think it's a testament for the way you guys know how to do digital and just how good of a person you are. And I have to say that. So there.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I have a really good team, too. Like, I work with my vertical editor, Ana Benedetti, and my associate editor, Carolina Moreno, and we have a reporter in D.C., Elise Foley, and a whole bunch of other people that do stuff like that.
Who's one of the best immigration reporters in the country. If you're not reading Elise Foley and follow immigration, then you really aren't following immigration, in my opinion. So, but anyway, so, okay, we really appreciate you taking the time. We're going to bring you back. You know, if you ever want to give us, like, you know, before you have a listicle you want to share with us, we could get you on the radio show and we can break it for you. So we really appreciate you taking the time with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime.
All right,
thank you, Roque.
Thank you very much, Roque.
All right, thank you. Ciao.
Goodbye.
All right, so those are all our guests, and it's, you know, we kind of extended this till 11:30 Eastern time, and of course we're going to bring in another rebel. You know what? This is what I think we should be doing. We should bring in Rodrigo right now. He's listened to the show, and I think we should have moments where we talk to Rodrigo at the end of the show. Rodrigo from Minnesota, an original Rebelde. Rodrigo, have you been listening to the show? What do you think? What do you want to say? Shout it out. We're just wrapping it up. It was a really strong show. We had some really strong guests, but you called in. So what's up, man?
Hey, Rodrigo.
Hey, how are you? ¿Cómo están?
Contentos de oírte.
Están con Luis, Mónica, y Julito, but did you listen to what we did, or are you just coming in and wishing us a happy Easter, or whatever you want to do, man? We're just wrapping it up.
No, first of all, I wanted to commend Hermano Christian for doing such a great job running the behind-the-scenes stuff. And so
he's doing an amazing job. He's doing an amazing job.
It's awesome.
Yay, Christian!
The way the show is flowing is amazing. I love all the topics. I love the fact that I know you guys had this idea that, you know, well, we're just going to get on the radio and just talk. And now it's becoming more like we have guests and people are listening and people want to be and talk about stuff. So I think it's always it's always Latino Rebels organic, and that's the way we keep on pushing. So I've been listening in. So specifically when we're talking about, I wanted to get in about with this weight piece because me and you had a very interesting Twitter conversation for most of Saturday morning.
Yeah, why don't you talk a little bit from your perspective? I mean, we have, like I said, we're gonna extend the show here. I'm on a different line right now. Christian tells me I sound okay, so but share your thoughts. I mean, I thought Blanca was great. I thought she was fantastic.
No, I think Blanca was great in her article, and then Roca's, the 19, that was straight on. I think one of the things that I just didn't get is how, and you pointed it out as well, is how are social mediums or media talking about Latino issues without having the voices of other people they're talking about included in it or talking about it. It sounds to me just like what happened in the 90s with music labels when as soon as Cypress Hill broke through, every record label started buying, started sweeping up all these, Chicano rap groups, Latino rap groups, or what they would call it at that Spanish rap groups, just because that's what was hitting. And I'm feeling this is kind of like similar thing. It's like, oh, it's now a topic, and I think Blanca put it nicely, saying, we've been around for forever. I mean, it's not like we don't know. It's
right.
Like, why does it have to become an issue now? It's been an issue for a while. It's been an issue since way before the first May 1st march and rally that I remember about that I got involved with, and I think the whole aspect of are we the next demographic to take over? I think that's what people fear. I think that's what the fear is out there that now America is once again going to become brown, because it was brown since 1848, before 1848, before all the other stuff, and so there's this whole idea that these things are gonna happen again. How do we do it? How do we don't lose the Alamo again? How do we deal with all that? How do we deal with manifest destiny? How do we deal with all that? And I think people just don't understand these issues need to be addressed or need to be included with people who represent that viewpoint, or who can speak to those stories, or who can speak to that experience. And right now we're not finding in it, and the only time we find it is when ourselves, and by ourselves I mean people who see themselves that they need to speak about something because nobody else is talking about it. They do so.
Right.
So ourselves, people, Latino voices, anybody else is willing to.
Yeah, anyone who's creating content. Right, exactly.
Exactly.
That was the point that I was trying to make. It's like, that was the point I was trying to make. It was like, we've been having these conversations, and some serious ones and uncomfortable ones too. Like uncomfortable ones. These aren't like happy-go-lucky conversations.
Exactly.
But this has been going on for like 3 or 4 years, and like all of a sudden it's like, oh, now we're like another outlet, so now we're going to make this important, and like none of these voices are being shown, and none of these voices are being amplified. And then when you raise your hand and say, hey guys, you missed the boat, then all of a sudden it's like, well, I got my credibility questioned because I wrote this, and I'm like seriously guys, like we're professionals here. I mean, you might not agree with me, but don't say that's the part where it's like you bring this up. I mean, this is not about anger or anything. This is not about you're the bad guy. Everyone thinks like it's like we're just these angry people writing about this.
we're always angry.
It's what it is. Yeah, we're always angry.
I guess he must have thought you were being defensive. I wonder, you were kind of conversing with him. Who thought this was a good idea to frame it this way? That's the big question mark that I have.
That's the big question I have. It's like from an editorial perspective. Yeah, you're in a pitch meeting, and I've been in those pitch meetings, and someone pitches something, and I'm the guy in the back room, and I've been there. It's like oh, this is great, like Mexican drug cartel story, or and I'm the one raising the hand and being like, can we move on to something a little bit more that, you know, that hasn't been overplayed? Or if this question about, you know, which is it's a good question. It's what you say, Rodrigo. It's a good question to ask. It's a good topic to ask. It was just framed incorrectly, and someone, whoever, an editor, said because they don't have that knowledge, they don't have someone to go to and be like, hey, let's ask Rodrigo, or let's ask Blanca, or let's ask Luis, or let's ask Monica, or let's ask Julio. What do they think?
That's
where the problem
in all those pitch meetings.
And if I may say something here, what I like was that you and Blanca just went ahead and wrote it. And I think that those two pieces are important. And as I insist with Blanca, what I love with Blanca's piece is not only she presented her argument, but she gave us a whole lot of references to continue pursuing the subject.
Yeah, I really liked her. Yeah. Listen, we're actually going to bring in somebody else. I know we're doing a really good job, like, not talking over each other or being good at this, but we promise we have to bring Taylor. She's been waiting, and we're going to bring in Taylor because she's another related, and I want to get her impressions about the show as well. So let me see if this works. Taylor, are you there?
Are you there?
Yeah, how are you?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, the system works.
What do you think about the show? What do you think about the show?
I loved it. For a second Sunday in a row, I am impressed. It's been a great discussion. I've loved hearing you guys. It's so great to have Luis Marie, who came from Borderlands, to talk with us, and I'm floored. So impressed.
And where are you now? Can you tell everyone where you're calling from?
I'm calling from Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Buenos Aires, Argentina. So basically, for the people that all think that we're just, you know, we're U.S.-based or this group is just one person, we actually have an international presence in one of my favorite parts of the world. And
I wanted to ask you guys.
Yeah.
Can I? So being part of Latino Rebels and not being a Latina, like I've lived in Latin America for 2 years now, and I've taken an interest in Latin American culture, and I write for Latin American media. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about someone from the outside who wasn't born here, but has sort of chosen to take an interest in Latin American issues and immigration issues, and who writes about them. Sort of what you guys think about that angle.
Hey, I'm going to let Rodrigo jump into that one because I know that.
It's always good to have allies. That's what I always have to say. It's always good to have good allies, and I think Taylor does an amazing job, and maybe we can talk about this off air, but I think she does a great job sharing what's being talked on Twitter, and I retweet a lot of the things that she's saying, you know, that are important. So I think, you know, overall, you know, it's an important topic to have about. I mean, for many years, people, you know, how do we deal with Latinidad? How do we deal with Latino issues? People usually just don't, you know, because they've never really understood it, and they don't experience it, or they can't speak to that. And I think all those voices that are out there now, specifically through the power of social media, that can create content and submit content and get your voices heard is one way to, and I think it's organic, as I always like to say it, and I think it's beautiful to see how that reaction is. And I think one of the main issues that I had with the whole Slate thing was the whole George Zimmerman thing, and the aspect that, you know, my response to everything was that, you know, George Zimmerman identified as a white person in order to beat the system, because he knew that was the only thing that was going to get him off. If there was going to be a brown versus African American issue, it was just going to come down to a different playing level. But if it was white versus black, there's already like a structure, or there's like already like cliff notes to how this is going to play out. And so one of the things that I was like is like, Zimmerman, and this is a personal issue to me because Zimmerman's family is from Peru, and the very first time I saw a picture of Zimmerman on the news, I was like, man, he's either Peruvian or Chilean.
You did.
Those are the two things that I said to myself.
I want to put on record. You did say that when you said that.
No, I
didn't
say that. No. I said that to a lot of my Chilean and Peruvian friends. It's like first thing I thought when I saw his picture posted on social media and everywhere and all the news, I was like, he looks like he's either Peruvian or he's Chileno. And those are the two things that I said, and I told that to a lot of my friends, and I was like, and then I was like, I started researching what is his past, what does he identify with, and through everything that was posted out there, he didn't say what he identified. He identified as just being an American, and that in itself is, is
but you know what I told you, I think it comes down to to answer Taylor's question and kind of wrap it to put it into Zimmerman. I think it's all about intent and authenticity. And, I mean, in the end, humans are humans, and we have a lot of universal, like, commonalities that bind us together and keep us together as opposed to the ones that separate us apart. But what's interesting about Zimmerman is that, like I told this to Rodrigo, he was white until like, he needed to get sympathy. And then what does he do? The first interview he does it with anybody? He does it with Univision.
Univision. Mm-hmm.
Univision. He does it in Spanish, and all of a sudden, this person who identified with being white now becomes, Jorge Zimmerman with an accent. And and I think I think someone like Taylor, Taylor found us through Twitter. She read she read an interview, and she was really interested. She's based in Argentina. She's done some great pieces about Argentina that really, she did a great piece about Monsanto that is on our website, LatinoRebels.com, about a local protest. But it was always with the right intentions. And knowledge. And knowledge, yeah. And my take on this is, like, it really doesn't matter. It's like, if you believe in the mission, if you believe in good writing, if you believe in sharing community and hanging out with, like, what we think we're cool people, that's what I like to think that we are. That's what it's all about. And the world's not going to change, if we just kind of become, that's the thing. Even with the Slate piece, I was trying to tell Bowie, it's like, dude, you're not the bad guy. I'm trying to just educate you a little bit, so maybe the next time approach it a little bit differently. And that's all it was, right? That's all it was. So, I don't know. I mean, that's what it is. So, Luis, Micah, you want to say anything here? We have one more call, and I'm going to look at the next call, but why don't you guys wrap this part of it up, too, because we have about 8 minutes left.
Sorry, so I just have to say, I'm so frustrated that we're still talking about Zimmerman. I feel like there are so many Latinos who are making important contributions every single day, and we don't hear about them. And I feel like Zimmerman, he's been on all these news shows. Obviously, the Trayvon Martin situation is tragic, and why are we still talking about that guy? Why aren't we talking about Latinos who are making a difference, trying to make this world better, right? Let's just stop talking about him.
All right, we're going to stop talking about him. How's that? It's done.
Zimmerman, that's not a man thing for this show, but you know what I'm saying? I just wish the media would start focusing on people who are doing good things and lift some of them up as opposed to spending time on this guy.
Let's forget him.
So listen,
he was just mentioning
that.
All
right, we're done, right? Luis, what are we going to say to him?
He's gone. I'm happy that Taylor is calling us from Argentina. And wrote from Los Malvinas, Argentina.
We've gone international. All right, so listen, we actually have a call from area code 201. I have no idea who this person is. Christian says, let's just try it. So it could be anybody. So let me take the lead here and see what happens. And if it's something really horrible, then who knows? Hi, this is Latino Rebels Radio.
I'm Gloria Montealegre. I'm actually glad to hear you guys on the air. It's amazing how, through social media and the internet, we're able to reach all, parts of the world. I'm actually in Jersey. And just wanted to let you know that, yep. Where are you guys at?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jersey too? So,
we're everywhere. We have people
everywhere.
everywhere. We have a couple in New York. We have a couple in Boston. We have people in D.C., Minnesota. We have Buenos Aires, Argentina, right? But what were you going to say?
Yeah, that is so cool. No, I'm just saying that we need more dialogue like this. Just the other day, I went to a discussion at Rutgers University about the Afro-Latinos, and the professor there said that they're having a hard time creating a Latino studies program because the university wants them to have a Latin American studies program, but the students feel that we also need to discuss the Latino issues here in the States and how and what the Latin American diaspora looks like, what the Latino diaspora looks like here in the States, and what the issues are here. And there's students that are ready to take minors and majors in the subject, and they can't because the university has not approved. Now, I'm part of a group from the 60s and 70s that helped the university, the same university, create a Puerto Rican studies program. However, that was kind of let go, and it's probably in the books, but nobody's taking that program anymore. And it's kind of sad. Sometimes it looks like we're recreating, we're reinventing the wheel, where we're coming back to doing things that had already been done, but that had been that are sitting dormant somewhere. And I'm glad that you guys, kind of lighting the fire, or at least discussing things that may get some of your listeners inspired to do something in their local communities. Do something for the good of others and for the good of the lot.
Well, that's part of one of the missions why we started it, and the group that we have actually believes in that a lot. And we're one of many voices, and like we said, we always love talking to people that have sort of that same commonality. But in fact, like, I do agree with you in the fact that reinventing the wheel, and here we are again. But you know what? I think we're pushing forward, and I think social media and digital media is a big part of that. It's a big part of that because I think we have a lot of young listeners. Young, I mean, I'm not that I'm like 7 years old, but they're in their 20s, and they're Latinos, and they're trying to figure it all out. And when they hear about like what's happened before, they're actually really smart. Yeah, they're really smart. They're really smart. And they're really committed, and they need to know that. So.
I think
we really appreciate. Yeah.
I think what has also happened is that a lot of activism has been criminalized, and I think people are afraid to take on the baton and move forward. And I think that you just got to be stop being scared and talking more and approach. Things can be discussed and in a peaceful way, and as long as we have an idea and push it forward. I don't think that. Yeah. Kids today need to be afraid to act and do. I mean, we were always concerned about the poorest in our community. I don't know who's taking care of them now. We were doing that when we were young in college. I don't know what the college students do now. I don't know if they're more concerned about their careers. But it's been a long time since I've been in college, so.
We appreciate you calling in, and I hope you continue listening to the show, and we're going to be here every Sunday night at 10. So thank you so much.
Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keep on fighting.
Thank you.
Hey, guys. All right, so I'm going to go around the table, and I'm going to just ask one question for each one of you, and then we're going to wrap it up. So, Taylor, what story are you following with interest this week?
This week?
What's interest? Yeah, or it could be a topic or anything. What interests you this week? Coming up.
Coming up is I'm actually doing research for a story about Carlos Mujica, who was a priest who works here in the Vishas, the slums, because the anniversary of his disappearance is coming up in May. So I'm writing a story about that, which is pretty interesting. as far as current events, I'm following you guys. I'm following Latino Rebels.
Thank you.
So thanks for being
That's
there.
a good plug. Plugging yourself. That's always good. Rodrigo, so Rodrigo, what do you think, or what stories you found this week, or what's something that's underreported that you think people should know about?
Well, I think maybe a professor can chime in with this too, but I just think that into what the caller was talking about, and I have to deal with this at my job as well too. It's the push to get rid of ethnic studies that just keeps on happening and happening and happening. I mean, I deal with it at work in a small department that I work for, but we have a wonderful Tony doing the same thing, dealing with it, and then just this caller talking about how like we can't form a Latino studies. Is it at Rutgers? Is that where it was?
Yeah, Rutgers.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's like, well, start calling some people because in about a couple of years I'm gonna have my master's and I'm gonna need a job. So why is it that this kind of information is not? Why are we, like you're saying, reinventing the wheel? Why we keep on fighting because nobody wants us to be here? I mean, that's the only way I see it, So,
right.
But I'm gonna be fighting a lot of stuff right now. But that's probably what's not being talked about, in my opinion. So,
that's cool, man. All right, let me ask the professor now. What are you following this week, professor?
Ay, Dios mío. Well, I had something also about academia, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, one topic. Go.
One topic is human trafficking, and there was the one story that I put it today in Latino Rebels of the Puig, on the one hand, and the other much more tragic situation of the 12-year-old Ecuadorian girl who hung herself or who appeared hung at the border as part of the human trafficking process.
Well, there you go. That is a topic that's severely underreported. And then Monica, what is on your mind for this week? What do you think what's the topic for you?
Yeah, the topic for me this week is really focusing in on sexual assault against farm worker women in the workplace. It's Sexual Assault Awareness Month this month, April, and there's a lot of good work being done around the country right now to raise awareness about the problem because it's a vast problem that affects a large percentage of farm worker women, and there's just not enough written about it. And so the next couple of weeks I'm going to be really focusing in on that.
Great. All righty, guys. This was Latino Rebels Radio. We pulled it off. Amazing work by my producer, Christian Enriquez. Excellent contributions from fellow rebeldes, Monica, Professor Luis, Rodrigo Taylor. We also had guests from Al Jazeera America's Borderlands, Blanca Vega and Roque Planas of HuffPost Latino Voices. We will be on again, Latino Radio, Sunday night, every Sunday night, 10 Eastern. If you missed the show, we'll have it up soon on podcast and on YouTube. And let's just close out with La Plebe, Latino Rebels Radio. Stay rebelde.